In tonight's Business Insider, hacking Wall Street. Investigators say more than 30 hackers and traders across the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia coordinated to make more than $30 million in illegal trades. How did they pull it off? For answers, we turn to our guest tonight on Capital Insider, Drew Harwell, reporter for The Washington Post. Drew, 9 people are facing criminal charges in an insider trading scam that investigators say started back in 2010. Explain how it worked.
So there were 2 groups of people who worked together. There were the hackers and the traders. The hackers aimed at these services called corporate news wires that companies would give details of their coming financial performance or mergers and acquisitions. And once the hackers were able to break into those services and find out the details from companies like Boeing and Bank of America early, they could go to the stock market and make trades that would then end up pretty profitable for them. So once they were to get that information, they would give that to the traders who would make those trades, and they could make a ton of money in very short time just by knowing exactly what was going to happen.
Now, so far, authorities say 2 Ukrainian hackers spearheaded the scheme by breaking into these news wires and gathering all the information. How did they find traders that would help them?
They did a lot of interesting things. One of them included a recruitment video that they put online suggesting to these traders that they had foolproof corporate intel. They could effectively tell the near future for some of these companies. And for these traders who weren't incredibly sophisticated but were interested in knowing these details, they signed on, and the hackers for their part got a cut of the proceedings, the profits that these traders were able to get. So it was very lucrative for both sides. Yeah,
it was a carrot on the stick. You have a chance of making more money. Who wouldn't want to, even if it's questionable? We know how Wall Street works as far as corporate America for that matter. Now, what will happen to those charged, especially the ones outside the U.S.?
That's a good question. Agents started arresting people yesterday. They've also started confiscating everything from a houseboat to an apartment complex to some of these shared brokerage accounts that these traders were making the illicit profits through. It's hard to tell. The federal authorities on this tend to have pretty wide leeway because they can suggest that anytime this activity happened in a U.S.-based bank or a brokerage account or a trading account, that was within the American agent's jurisdiction. So a lot of these traders are in countries like France and Cyprus, Ukraine and Russia. It'll still be some time before we know really what happens with them, but it seems like the agents are going pretty strongly against them because the companies that were affected by this were some of America's biggest, and this activity was just so long-term and so wide-scale that it'd be hard for them to ignore that.
Drew, the concept behind this scheme seems very simple. Get the information on major business deals before the news is made public. Do officials think this kind of corporate intelligence could be a new target for hackers? We've seen identity theft go up in recent years. Is this the next big thing?
It seems like it. When we hear about these massive hacks of places like Target and government agencies, they're often casting a very wide net and getting a lot of identities, a lot of people's information that they can then use. Some of it will be useful, some of it won't. In this case, and in a lot of, I think, the financial hacks that we're seeing now, it's a lot more laser focused. These traders and hackers knew exactly the sorts of reports and intel they wanted. They also knew what companies they wanted. Some of the traders had shopping lists of companies that they wanted to be watching that they thought would be most profitable for them. So I think we're starting to see that more and more now. Some of the experts I talked to said, these financial hackers are more and more sophisticated by the day. They're almost acting like some of these larger nation states, like hackers in China and Russia have been alleged to do, where they have a business model and they have a customer base and they know exactly what they're looking for and they have the means to do it.
You're exactly right. It's really incredible. All right. Let's switch gears. Google announced on Monday that it would restructure under the corporate name Alphabet. What was their reasoning for the massive change?
It's interesting for Google because for so long the question has been, why is a search company working on self-driving cars or balloons that give internet to places where it doesn't have it?
Exactly. And the glasses, I mean, we all remember those Google glasses.
Yeah, Google glasses, even contact lenses that take your glucose level if you're diabetic. All these sort of amazing, ambitious projects that Google is working on. This Alphabet change, by allowing this to be a holding company for all those ambitions, sort of answers that question, and it distinguishes Google, which is something that pretty much everybody uses and which still makes about 90% of the company's money. It allows that to distinguish itself from all of these moonshot projects, which will take a lot more experimentation and may not make as much money up front.
Now, Wall Street reacted favorably to the news, pushing shares up 4% a day after the announcement. But what does it mean for the long haul?
Investors are really hoping that there's going to be a greater level of transparency now, knowing that all of these companies will be separated under the Alphabet umbrella and they can individually measure the success of each company. And the Google and Alphabet people have been promising that, a level of transparency there. It remains to be seen whether they'll really be that clear. When we think about big conglomerates, everybody thinks about Berkshire Hathaway with Warren Buffett, and some people have made the connection there. But in those companies, in Berkshire Hathaway, which owns Geico and Dairy Queen and a lot of other companies, they're not totally explicit about how those individual companies are doing either. So it's still sort of up to Alphabet how clear they want to be to investors, but I think they're hoping that they'll be able to get some more information that they weren't able to get just under the Google name.
So much going on Wall Street this week, not even mentioned China. That's another story. Drew
Yes.
Harwell, reporter for the Washington Post. Thanks again, Drew.
Thank you.